Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Saudara Razali, pengacara majlis. Mula-mula sekali izinkan saya mengucapkan berbanyak terima kasih kepada pihak Perpustakaan Tuanku Bainun UPSI yang telah menjemput saya untuk mengisi slot Let's Talk pada petang ini dengan tajuk yang agak luar biasa. Mungkin ada di antara saudara-saudara di sini sedia maklum ada sedikit family connection di sini. Be that as it may, I hope I will be able to justify the invitation by talking about something which is, I would say, of interest to many people, especially those who are involved in the education sector. But I would like to start by deliberating a little bit on the terminology. The term Soulistic Science is a new term which I coined, which I invented. You cannot find it in the Oxford Dictionary or any thesaurus for that matter. But I hope one day it will be accepted into the list of new terms in the Oxford Comprehensive Dictionary. Now, well, if you don't mind, if I can continue in English rather than Bahasa, I feel more comfortable. There is more continuity, so to say, if I were to speak in English rather than in Bahasa. But from time to time, I will revert back to Bahasa, especially when dealing with translation from the Al-Quran, ayat Al-Quran. Like, scientific knowledge has always been regarded as a neutral body of knowledge. Scientific facts and processes and phenomena had always been, or the facts, the phenomena, the processes that govern the existence and the function of all living as well as non-living things in the whole of the universe are governed by the properties or the characteristics of the components that make up the living as well as the non-living things and their interactions. The physical properties, the biological properties, even the mathematical characteristics of all the components determine the processes and the facts that control the function of living organisms, which include us, human beings, as well as non-living entities in the whole of the universe, including the planets, the stars, and the elements that make up our Earth. As such, scientific knowledge had been conventionally divided into disciplines and sub-disciplines. And hence we have biology, we have chemistry, we have physics, mathematics, and so on and so forth, which reflects their natural properties. Okay? But then as more and more scientific knowledge and the technological advances that arise from the scientific knowledge are being exploited and used and employed in the day-to-day life of human beings, especially, as well as in the exploitation and use of natural resources that are present in our environment, people begin to infuse or integrate some non-scientific aspects into the sphere of scientific knowledge. Hence, socio-economic issues become more and more relevant in science and technology, and vice versa. Likewise, values and systems are also often considered together when people talk about science and technological advances. Okay? In the first phase, where science was purely regarded as a natural phenomenon, science was often referred to as empirical knowledge or empirical science. But when more and more non-scientific issues are integrated into scientific knowledge, like I mentioned just now, socio-economic aspects, culture and values, and so on and so forth, science has been relabeled as holistic knowledge. It becomes more holistic, it becomes more relevant to the day-to-day life in our world. But now, scholars, particularly those with religious background, at the same time are also proficient in some aspect of scientific disciplines. This is especially so in the field of engineering, field of physics, especially astronomy and aeronautical science. A new phase appears in scientific knowledge, and this is what I term as Soulistic Science. Science with a soul, science with roh, science with some spiritual dimension. So that's how the term Soulistic Science came to my mind. And when I mentioned this to many people, of course, they would respond, "Oh, that is a strange term." Even just now, my former boss at UNIMAS responded by saying, "That sounds Greek to me." You know, when someone say something sounds Greek, meaning is completely different. Anyhow, as I said, hopefully I could generate interest in this subject, and eventually the term become acceptable. Okay, I mentioned just now, science now needs, or rather people are beginning to integrate a third dimension, which is the spiritual dimension. What is the spiritual dimension? This is where I want to adjourn and refer to our holy book, the Al-Quran. As Sheikh Ghazali mentioned earlier, the Al-Quran contains about 940 verses. Some authors claim 1,000 or close to 1,000 verses that make references, either directly or indirectly, to scientific facts, scientific phenomena, scientific processes that occur in our universe. Of course, to mention the whole lot will take a long time. What I'm going to do this afternoon is to pick up only a few consecutive verses, in fact, from one surah, and that is Surah An-Nahl, the 16th Surah, verses 65 to 69. To illustrate my point about the spiritual dimension of scientific knowledge. Please excuse me. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Perhaps in the interest of time, I would not be reciting the original in the interest of time, I would not be reciting the original Arabic verses from the Al-Quran, but instead I will go straight into the translations. I mentioned earlier the verses concerned are verses 65 to 69. The translation from verse 65, and please excuse me, I'm going to read it in Bahasa because this Quran is the Bahasa translation. I don't want to give you an instantaneous translation into English because I may make a lot of mistakes. So I will read it as it is in Bahasa, and later on I'll try to explain in English. Okay? Verse 65. Dan Allah menurunkan air hujan dari langit, dan dengan air itu dihidupkannya bumi yang tadinya sudah mati. Sungguh pada yang demikian itu benar-benar terdapat tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah bagi orang-orang yang mendengar. There's an added emphasis on the last phrase there for some reason. I will explain about it later. Verse 66. Dan sungguh, again added emphasis here, pada haiwan ternak itu benar-benar mendapat pelajaran bagi kamu. Kami memberimu minum dari apa yang ada dalam perutnya, yang berupa susu murni di antara kotoran dan darah, yang mudah ditelan bagi orang yang meminumnya. Take note of the specific words mentioned there. Verse 67. Dan dari buah kurma dan anggur kamu membuat minuman yang memabukkan dan rezeki yang baik. Sungguh pada yang demikian itu benar-benar terdapat tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah bagi yang mengerti. Verse 68 and 69 together. Dan Tuhanmu telah mengilhamkan kepada lebah, buatlah sarang di gunung-gunung, di pohon-pohon kayu, dan di tempat-tempat yang didirikan manusia. Kemudian makanlah kamu dari segala macam buah-buahan. Kemudian lalu tempuhlah jalan Tuhanmu yang telah dipermudahkan bagi kamu. Dari perut lebah itu kemudian keluar minuman, yakni madu, yang bermacam-macam warna. Di dalamnya terdapat ubat yang dapat menyembuhkan manusia. Sungguh pada yang demikian itu benar-benar terdapat tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah bagi orang-orang yang berfikir. There are three common elements in those 5 verses which I shall try to highlight. Now, the first common element is the revelation about the scientific facts and process. Verse 65 refers to the biological process as well as the underlying soil, the chemical changes in the soil that occur when rain occurs, when rain comes down from the sky, and how the rainwater transformed a barren patch of land which was originally practically dead, as mentioned in the Quran, because there was nothing there, no plants, no animals, the rocks were all dry up, the entire place was empty. That's what's meant by the term tanah yang mati. But following rain, everything will be transformed, life forms will spring up, plants will grow, insects and the like will come and gather in that place. Eventually, bigger animals and finally human beings will also come to that area to benefit from the recipe, the produce, the products that spring up as a result of rain falling in that area. That's element number one. And then likewise in verse 66, the reference was made to the anatomy of certain types of animals that produce and store milk, which is the mammary gland. And if you are into animal science, you know the mammary gland is located between the excretory system, which deals with our waste product, our feces, our urine, on the one hand, and then on the other, another organ, the heart, that stores and circulates the life-sustaining blood throughout our body. And yet, even though it was stuck in between these two other organs, the milk that we extracted from mammary gland is never contaminated by either the waste products or the blood. And that's the marvel about the creation from our Father. That's a sign fact. And then likewise, verse 67, the scientific aspect there is about food chemistry and microbiology. How juices extracted from either date kurma or grapes, anggur, are on the one hand transformed or converted into nutritious drink for human. On the other, the same raw material could also be converted into alcoholic drink, intoxicating drink, which is bad for us. So, what are the biological and chemical processes involved in these two processes? Okay, those are the scientific facts. Okay, finally, verses 68 and 69, the scientific facts presented in the verse was that firstly is about behavioral science, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon the humble honeybee the ability to fly high up and build nests on the top of very tall trees or other tall structures, whether natural structures or those structures created by man. And from there they are able to navigate their way all the way down in search of areas where there are plenty of flowering plants, where they can extract tiny amounts of honey from individual flower, and then carry it back after negotiating quite a complicated route all the way back to their nest, up, at the top of the trees or other structures. Now scientists have done quite a comprehensive work on how actually honeybees navigate, find their way back and forth. They use the Earth's magnetic field as their guide. And there are complicated sets of dance patterns for the first bee to find a way to show to the rest of its nest mate which direction to fly in order to find the flowers, and then which direction to fly to get back to the nest. That is being emphasized in the first part of the ayat. Of course, it was not elaborated, but that's a detail. And then the chemical contents of honey itself. It is well known, honey contains a lot of very effective medicinal medicinal substances that can help to cure a lot of ailments, not only in humans but also in other living beings. So that's the medical science. Okay, so that's the first element in all of this ayat. Now the second element, the second common element, all of those scientific facts and phenomena and processes, the Quran refers to, or they are denoted as signs of Allah's greatness, signs of Allah's supreme power, supreme ability, tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah. In all of those, as we understand, when we use the word tanda, literally it means an indicator. When it is an indicator, what we understand, below it, behind it, there are a lot of details. Okay, there are a lot of detailed facts that are buried, and it is for us to uncover, to unravel, to study. And that's what is meant. That is what is that's, I suppose, that is the intended meaning of the word tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, so that we go and investigate what are actually the details about this time. Okay, that's the second common element in all of this. The third element, and this is very, very relevant to you and me, to all of us here, in fact, to an institution like UPSI. I wish to refer to the verses again, and there are three recurring phrases. Verse 65, the phrase is liqaumin yasma'un, mereka yang mendengar, ataupun mereka yang belajar. Verse 67, liqaumin ya'qilun, mereka yang mereka yang berakal, mereka yang boleh, yes, mereka yang boleh faham, mereka yang boleh membuat pertimbangan. And then verse 69, liqaumin yatafakkarun, mereka yang boleh berfikir, mereka yang boleh membuat penilaian, baik atau buruk, besar atau kecil. Now if we put all of these references together, who do you think Allah Subhanahu wa Taala was referring to? Yes, umat, definitely. But then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala was more specific. Mereka yang boleh berfikir, mereka yang boleh belajar, mereka yang boleh mendengar. Now to me, and this is probably arguable, probably I need some ustads to comment on this later on. To me, it is specific, referred to people like you and me, people who are involved in the business of education, people who are involved in the business of doing scientific studies and scientific analysis. Not everyone, not the people who are working in the rubber plantation or the people who are selling cakes along the road. See? Of course, we may argue that those people also boleh berfikir, those of course who are smart enough to evaluate bad things or good things. Okay. But I believe it is a message for people who are educated, who are involved with the educational business, whether as students or lecturers or researchers. The responsibility for unraveling the mysteries, behind this tanda-tanda kebesaran Allah Ta'ala. The responsibilities weigh heavily on people like us. And by inference, we should consider ourselves as students and lecturers and researchers having that extra duty to uncover the mysteries behind the signs of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's greatness. And it follows that once we have crossed that level, when we have discovered the mystery behind it, it is therefore our duty to then expand, to then explain, to tell the rest of the Ummah. So the entire process of doing studies, doing analysis, learning about science, learning about the facts behind those phenomena that have been mentioned in the Quran, eventually should be regarded as da'wah activity. And at the end of the day, through that process, when not only you and myself and us all understand, the mysteries, the facts, the processes behind what was referred to as the science of Allah's greatness, and by extension, when we preach to others who were not privileged enough, to have the same level of intellectual capacity as us, we should expect at the end of the day to be able to enhance our iman, our aqidah, our taqwa. So the point that I would like to end my talk with today is that scientific knowledge, especially those that deals with natural phenomena and those that were quoted in the Quran as signs of Allah's greatness, we are duty bound to study, analysis, and disseminate them as part of the general da'wah, Islamic da'wah. So, and this is where I should apologize if there are ustads around. The da'wah activity should not be confined to the normal dosa, pahala thing, dunia, akhirat thing. It's much wider than that. Even talking about scientific discoveries, which, as mentioned in the Quran, as alluded to in the Quran, could enhance, if they could enhance your iman and it could enhance your taqwa, and obviously the examples that are given are meant to do that, then you are actually doing a da'wah. You are actually a da'i. And I would like to introduce a new term, the technological da'i. Dakwah untuk ilmu, teknologi, science and technology. Now, before I end, I want to add something which is also related but quite separate from this topic. Science and technology has also taught us other thing which is closely linked to our central tenets, Rukun Islam and Rukun Iman. We look at the biological world, all living things, they require two things separately in order to be alive, in order to survive. The first thing is your blueprint for every characteristics. The thing that determines how you look at, how you behave, and so on and so forth. And that's your gene. I'm sorry, I'm a geneticist, so I want to mention that. That's for most of you probably be familiar with the term DNA instead of genes, because if I mention gene, you might be thinking about your slow gene. Okay, so DNA. You take whatever living organism, from as low as viruses or jellyfish in the sea, and then you go up as high as the whales in the ocean, the elephants in the jungle. They are all originate from a single entity that determines their characteristic, and that's your DNA. Whether you're a virus, whether you're a bacteria, you're a fungus, you're a jellyfish, you're an elephant, you're a man, all of them are determined by one inheritatory factor, and that's DNA. One. Now the other one that all living things require is water. You have read about when astronauts or aeronautical scientists do exploration in faraway planets in the universe, and they want to know whether there are any living things ever survived there, ever lived there in a faraway planet. The first thing they would be looking for is water, or signs of the existence of water at some stage, at some phase of the life of that planet, including our moon. The first thing they would have tried to analyze whether water was present there. Same thing like planet Mars or planet Jupiter or planet Pluto. Water is always the first thing they would do. Why? Because every living thing needs water. No living thing can survive, no living thing can be alive without water. What is the linkage? Now this is where the concept of Tawheed comes in. Why everything, every living thing only depends on a single factor to survive, to live? Either water as a factor for life, or DNA as a factor that determines it. Why wasn't there more than one type of factor that determine how you look at, how you behave, your characteristic? Beside DNA, you have other things. Likewise, why does every living things totally depends on water, and without water you cannot survive? Again, the unitary requirement for a single factor. And doesn't that show you that there is only one creator in the whole scheme of things, in the whole of universe? Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can go on also give an example about the Einstein theory of relativity, and then the famous formula E equal to mc squared. Are you, any of you familiar with that? And that's the unitary, or rather the unifying formula for energy, mass and movement. Again, doesn't that reflect the unitary authority? There's only one entity responsible for the creation of everything in the universe. Isn't that also another, undeniable indicator of the oneness of God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? But I will not go any further on these two subjects. So with that, thank you very much for listening. Assalamu alaikum.